Hi, I'm Daniel Fisher, and this is the Behringer MonoPoly Four-Oscillator analog synthesizer. So back in the mid-'80s when I was in the United States Army Band, I bought my first polyphonic synthesizer, the Chord Poly 6, and I loved it to death. I loved the strings and I loved the pads, but I also really wanted the Chord MonoPoly. Just the idea of having four oscillators stacked on one note, each being able to be their own notes, it was just very powerful and I wanted it, but I never was able to get one. In fact, up until now, I've never actually played one. And so now Behringer has the MonoPoly based off the original back in the early to mid-'80s. And it's got a very similar feature set, although it also adds MIDI and a couple other neat features. But it's just really great to see it again. So what is the MonoPoly? It's a four-oscillator analog synth, analog oscillators, analog filter, analog all the way through. And each of the oscillators can have their own wave shape. Each of the oscillators can have their own volume and tuning. You've got a 4-pole low-pass VCF with resonance. You have two EGs, envelope generators, one for the filter, one for the volume. And then you have not only the ability to do unison, but this will also do, it says poly, but it's really parophony in that, yeah, you get four notes, but they're shared by the same filter and the same amp. But they do a little tricky thing with this auto damp where they give you a little better sense that you have four independent notes, even though you're still sharing the same filter. Then you have two LFOs. They're calling modulation generators, or MG. And one of them you can choose four waveforms, and you have separate frequency control over each. One of them's used with this mod wheel, and you can switch whether that's doing the voltage control filter or pitch, or just VCO1 or the slave VCO. So when you're doing pulse width modulation, or you're doing frequency modulation via the X mod or sync, then it can do lots of really very interesting tricks. It's also got an arpeggiator, pretty basic. It's got up, it's got down, it's got up and down. It has the ability to latch, and you can do 1 octave, 2 octaves, or 3 octaves. And then you have on your pitch wheel the ability to send that to either the voltage control filter or pitch, or again the VCO1 slave VCO, which again lets you do very cool tricks with the effects section. And they call it effects. It doesn't actually have any reverb or delay, anything like that. So I'm adding the source audio collider, which can be a delay or reverb or both. I will not turn that on until we're deep into this so that you get to really hear this thing all by itself. And man, it sounds amazing by itself. One of the times I was sitting here setting it up, I reached to turn off all the other oscillators and realized I only had one oscillator on. That's how fat this thing is. And then the ability to add 3 more oscillators is just incredible. You have the ability to do single trigger or multiple triggers, so you can do legato tricks. It has glide. It has, like I mentioned before, the ability to do pulse width modulation. You have width and intensity. And then they have, like I mentioned, the ability to detune each of the 4 waveforms, but then there's also a detune knob, and it's very clever in that it only detunes oscillators 2 and 4. So I'll show you that in a second. And then on the back panel, we have audio out, as well as control voltage ins for your pitch and your trigger and your filter. And there's also a foot switch for arpeggio. There's MIDI in, out, and through, as well as USB MIDI. So I'm going to start with just the first oscillator. I've got it set to sawtooth, and I'm in the lowest octave transposition and the lowest octave setting for the octave knob. So, and I've got the pitch wheel set to an octave down. This is still just one oscillator. And I can go up because I have obviously 4 different octave switches on the knob. But then I also have 3 transpositions. So I'm in the lowest right now. I can go up 2 more. Man, right out of my hearing. The next one is triangle. and then pulse width, which I have control over. Notice, and I really do like this, notice that when you go to the extremes of pulse width, you can actually get it to where there's no sound at all. I love that sound of the transition between that. And the MonoPoly is unique in that you have a switch on your waveform to go between pulse width and pulse width modulation. So on the fly, you can set up a pulse width modulation that you like, but not kick it in right away. So I'm going to set that up here. So here's pulse width, and now I'm going to go pulse width modulation. And again, I know I keep saying it, but that was one oscillator. Now I'm going to bring in a second of the four oscillators, and it's also on sawtooth wave right now. And I can do a detune just on that oscillator if I want. But there's also a detune knob. It's very clever. Like I said, it only does oscillators 2 and 4. So you can set up some kind of detuning with all 4, but then go more extreme if you want. So now I'm going to bring in a third oscillator. And the fourth oscillator. So now I'm going to show you that detune knob. I currently have it at 0. We're still hearing some detuning because I have a slight bit of detuning on each of the knobs, but now I can, with a single knob, create much more detuning. So that's just a really nice performance tool to have right there to grab. Right above it is Portamento. I mean, this is like modular synthesizer levels of fatness. It is amazing to hear. And I'm not even playing with the filter yet or anything else. But man, what a big sound. So I'm currently in the Unison mode. And now I want to show you the poly mode, where they're taking each of the oscillators and allowing you to have up to 4 separate pitches. And there's an auto damp feature that when it's on, it's doing its best to not play the extra notes that you're no longer using, even if you have release on. It just sort of adds to the feeling that you have a truly polyphonic analog synthesizer. Whereas without it, so as long as any note is down, the VCA is wide open and you're hearing all the notes. Each is useful for different techniques, but I'm going to turn it back on. Now I'll show you the trigger mode. So I'm going to go back to Unison. So here it is in single, which means that if you're playing legato, it won't retrigger the envelopes. So let's get some filter going now. So in single mode, in multi, back to single. And single's really good if you're doing lead lines because it lets you re-trigger a note only when you want to, and it kind of lets you just play more expressively. And now we'll do the Unison share mode. That allows you to play one note and have all the oscillators ganged up on that one note. And as you play more notes, it splits the oscillators out. So here's one note. So you have to let go to get everybody back on the same note. So if you're playing kind of in a detached way, you've got unison. And then the last mode in mono is chord memory. So while I'm in poly, I can build up a chord, and I can use this hold button to help. And that'll stay. And then when I hit the chord memory button, now I get all 4 of those notes transposed across the keyboard. Then we're going to come over to the effects section, and they call it that, but it's not effects like delay or reverb. It is the ability to do oscillator sync or cross mod, or both oscillator sync and cross mod. And so I'm going to start by getting out of chord memory. We'll go back to unison. So we're going to start with the filter envelope generator, which is going to be doing the oscillator sync, where we're taking one oscillator against another while they're synced, and you get this effect. You know, it's the Cars sound, you know. And I can control, obviously, with the envelope, that speed and rate of attack and decay of the pitch sweep. And just for a moment, I'm going to throw that into some reverb just to hear it. Reverb's back off. And I can also use, instead of the VCF envelope generator, I can use modulation generator 1, so I can do a sweep instead. And this frequency mod knob allows me to choose the intensity. So I'm going to go from a lot of intensity here. And I can slow that frequency down quite a bit too. So I can do this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some ping pong delay on it just for a moment, because I got to hear that. Okay, so now I'm going to do cross mod, and I have 2 knobs for that. I have my cross mod knob. And right now I'm controlling that with the VCF envelope, so I can do it slow if I want. And I have choice between a single mode and a double mode. Double mode makes it even more intense. And then they have a switch position in the middle, which gives you both oscillator sync and cross mod. In fact, this would be a good time to kick in the arpeggiator. So I'll do up and down with 1 octave, and I'm going to latch it, which means I can let go of the keys and it'll stay. So now we'll talk about the pitch bend and the modulation generator wheel, which each have their own intensity knob, and it's an analog knob. It's not a switch, which I really like because instead of setting my pitch bend depth to exactly a whole step or 2 whole steps or a half step or an octave, you can do almost that or just a little bit past that, which sounds so much more natural. It's more like a string bend where you're not always hitting a flat wall of your pitch bend depth. So I'll use my hold button here so that I can work the knobs and the wheel at the same time. And then that, like I said, that's going to pitch, but I can also do it to filter. And that's probably more useful when you're doing arpeggiation. So I'm going to do up and down 3 octaves, and then I'll kick in the delay as well to show you what it sounds like to sweep the filter through the delay. And then the last choice for the bend wheel is VCO1/slave VCO. And what that does is it allows me to do things like oscillator sync via the pitch bend wheel. So right now my intensity is at 0, so it does nothing. I have to hold. So now I have it set to sounding like a perfect fifth. And I could do the same thing to the mod wheel, setting that to VCO1, allowing me to do both modulation of the oscillator sync as well as bending of the oscillator sync. So here's that. And then, like the pitch wheel, I can send that to VCF as well. And like everything else, I can use the intensity knob to decide how much filter modulation I want. And while I can't show you everything that this thing can do, I do have to show you what it sounds like with each oscillator in its own octave. And we got to throw some delay on that. And that's basically the front panel. And the thing that makes the MonoPoly something you might want is this is a perfect synth for people that just want to be able to reach up, turn a knob, and know what's going to happen. It's very predictable. You understand the four oscillators, a single filter envelope, a single volume envelope. You've got some very cool modulation possibilities. You can set them all up and then turn the effects button off so that you can have some very complex things happen at a push of a button. Your detuning can happen at a twist of a knob. The arpeggiator is easy to work. You can quickly switch what your mod and pitch wheel do. And so it's just a brilliant live performance synth. And so now I'm going to perform live on it. I'll be, again, using the Source Audio Collider, sometimes reverb, sometimes delay, maybe even reverb and delay if the mood strikes me. Wow, I am really glad this synthesizer is back again. If you have any further questions about the Behringer MonoPoly analog synthesizer or the Source Audio Collider, please contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. My name is Daniel Fisher. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Click here for more videos like these, or go to sweetwater.com for all your music, instrument, and pro audio needs.